Hi, everyone. This is Barb Bruno, and I want to welcome you to this webinar. Our topic today is your team could produce more, but will they? Most owners and managers know that their sales team is capable of higher levels of success. And the truth of the matter is most recruiters and most account executives also know that they could do more. However, there's a great differential between can and will. It's important to realize that not everyone has the capacity of becoming a big biller or a top producer, but everyone could obviously produce more. It's interesting. For years, I've always taught everyone I know that, whenever you hear somebody say, I can't, the word can't, has never been allowed in my office, because when somebody tells me they can't do something, as the owner, what I hear is that they won't do something. Because if you really want to do something, if you really want to have a record year next year, as an individual, you can do more than you're currently doing. Every one of us can improve what we're doing. And the great news is that 2020 to 2030 is predicted as the strongest decade for the recruiting profession. But just because it's going to be the strongest decade for the recruiting profession doesn't mean you're going to have a record decade or you're going to have a record year in 2020. It's all about, who works for you and what individuals set up as their goals, and what they really are willing to do, because there's a price to pay to increase production. I don't believe that you can make somebody a big biller. I think you hire them. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and hire somebody who's currently a top producer in our profession, because quite frankly, owners are protecting them. And many people that are out there looking for a job are not the peak performers, are not the top producers. What I am suggesting is that you identify, you hire, and you retain individuals who have a high history of high achievement throughout their entire life. If someone is self-motivated and a high achiever, they're going to do the same for you. And so when you're out there and you're hiring for your own company, you've got to look at what a person's done in the past. High achievers have a DNA that is different than most people. High achievers achieve more faster than other people. They get promoted faster. They usually have responsibility well above the years of their experience. They've been recognized for what they do. They get awards. Those are the people you want to hire. You want to hire peak performers who want to sell. Now, what I want to do is I want to answer the questions that I most frequently receive from owners and managers. This year, I conducted over 35 conferences. And at most conferences, I have owners pull me aside. And it's interesting because they're always asking me the same questions. First is, how do you keep your sales team motivated? I believe that you cannot motivate someone who has made the choice not to be motivated. What you can do is identify what's most important to the people that you employ. If your sales team understands what's in it for them, they will motivate themselves, because they do things for their own reasons, not yours. I used to get up in front of my team and say, we're going to have a record year. And I would turn out all kinds of contests and incentives and bonuses. And I would see eyes rolling with some of the people that work for me. And I would bring them in and say, why? Well, they'd say, well, Barb, we're earning really good money. I really don't want to work any more hours. I'm really happy where I'm at. What I realized is by me announcing what I wanted to do, sometimes I was demotivating the people that work for me because they didn't see the benefit to them. Contests will motivate your team if they're short, simple, and designed around the wants and needs of your team. And sometimes having flexible hours or working virtual or time off or, more casual days. Those are motivators that don't cost you any money, but can motivate your team. The second question, what can I do to help my sales team excel? The most important assistance you can provide the people that work for you are numbers, stats, and individual ratios. This is a sales profession, and sales is a number game. But once the members of your sales team know their numbers, then they know what results they need every day to achieve their goals. If your team is not consistently achieving goals, if they have a good month, a bad month, a good month, a bad month, that just shows me that they're not watching their ratios. They don't know how many working days there are in a month. They don't know what results they need every day. Most recruiters, especially contingency direct recruiters, feel every month is a crapshoot and they can't predict their earnings. Of course they could. Once they know the results they need, they can predict exactly what they're going to do to achieve the goals. The problem with contract staffing is often your recruiters are getting residual income because it's that reoccurring revenue model, and they get comfortable, especially when you've got somebody out there for a year or two or 3. They've got that residual income. It's important that you find out what they're trying to do for themselves and the people they love. And that's how you can basically help them to exceed. Again, I'm not saying that you have to tell somebody to make a certain number of calls. I want you to make 30 calls a day. That doesn't help them, because if they're not making good calls, they can make 75 calls a day and not get any better. It's more important to focus on those minimum results standards. How many interviews do they do? How many send outs do they book? How many people do they send on first interviews before someone's hired? That is the most important number that you monitor. And if your team does nothing but just increase the number of first interviews every month, they will make more money. If you have members who are not producing their daily results, the worst thing you could do is to have them make more calls, because it's probably something in their call that's not right. Listen to them. Listen to them. The other thing, if you have somebody working for you and they're not hitting your goals and you don't do anything about it, you're discrediting yourself as a manager, because the rest of your team members are wondering why they're still there. Number 3, how do I get a past top producer out of a slump? The only way to eliminate slumps is to commit to minimum results on a daily basis. Often slumps follow great months, because during a great month, your recruiter is prepping and debriefing and closing. And what they forget to make are recruiting and marketing presentations, because they're so busy closing business and celebrating. I'd also like to address the individuals who quit and stay, because they can lower the morale of your entire team. And you have to make a decision as an owner or manager what they are producing for you now. You're in business as an owner or manager to make profits. A slump can indicate a loss of passion for our profession. Our career is challenging. People say recruiting's not that hard. Of course it is. We have people on both sides of our sale. Nobody wants to talk on the phone. They're hiding behind technology. We have to learn how they can see the benefit of talking to us. There are also times when you just, quite frankly, need to upgrade your team. You can only hit your goals if the people that work for you are hitting their goals. Your people are your greatest assets if they're the right person. Now, how do you get big billers to follow procedures? This makes it difficult to enforce systems with the rest of the team if you've got everybody doing things the same way. There's a reason why franchises work. I was in South Africa training for 5 weeks, and it was interesting because we stopped by a McDonald's. It was the only restaurant around us. And I kept thinking, what was McDonald's going to be like in South Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa? And I was surprised to find out it was basically the same menu and the same food. I mean, a couple of things were a little bit different, but it was set up the exact same way. Every desk in your office should be set up the same way. Everybody in your office should be entering things in their ATS. I always tell recruiters and account executives, if something is not entered in your ATS, it doesn't exist. You've got to enter what you're doing. You've got to use the system. And by the way, no one likes their ATS. Everybody complains about their ATS. Most of the time they're complaining because they haven't taken the time to learn how to use it. But again, I've known many owners who have almost been held captive by their big billers because they know they're cranking out a lot of revenue for you, and so you treat them differently. You have several choices to make. You can isolate a big biller if you've got someone who just is not following rules and let them do their own things. You can enforce systems. You can meet them somewhere in the middle. You can assign, I believe that 2 recruiters should handle every client you have so that your clients have an established rapport with more than one person. If that person's not there, somebody else can pitch in. You can build a team around your big billers, which has elevated the success and also enhances retention. I was working with a company 2 years ago that had great turnover and was having a hard time, keeping people. And they had an offshore team, they had an onshore team. They were very disconnected. It just wasn't working. And so I showed them how to build teams around their big billers. And now they have this, this phenomenal sales going on. They've almost doubled their sales in 2 years. And it's because they put systems in place. They built teams around their big billers, and everybody knows what their job is. And you as an owner or manager need to develop a rapport with your company's top clients. You should know your top clients, and again, if you're big billers, if you've got certain people that just don't follow any rules, that can demotivate the rest of your team. Or if you're letting certain offices do certain things that other offices aren't doing, if you have multiple offices, that can really cause a lot of confusion and a lot of processes to be duplicated. And you've got to be sure that your offshore team is complementing the onshore team, that people aren't double doing work, because so often, there's a lot of duplication of conversations, duplication of work. And that's where systems can come in and really solve things for you, where you run more efficiently. Number 5, how do you get your recruiters to upgrade clients? Most people feel we don't need any more clients, that you've got enough clients. You're not filling the jobs that you currently are getting. You're not filling all your contracts. Well, that goes back to the what's in it for me. Once your account executives, your salespeople understand the importance of representing the companies that candidates want to work for, client development becomes a no-brainer. Your recruiters should be asking everybody they interview, what are the top companies that you would love to work most for, and what are companies you would never work for? And the reason you want your recruiters to ask those questions, they share that information with the sales team, because there are certain companies that people want to work for. There's many companies that people will never work for. And so sometimes you're presenting a contract with one of your clients, and the client has a bad reputation and nobody wants to work for them. You've got to know those things. And recruiters and sales, you're on the same team. The day that you realize you've got to work together, it's not sales versus recruiters. You're on the same team. But recruiters, if you don't like the business that's coming in and you can't fill it, then you've got to give leads to your sales team, because your sales team has to constantly upgrade clients. What happens to most companies, I'm working with a company right now that is making 75% of their revenue from 3 clients. And they were just told 4 months ago that 2 of their clients are no longer going to work with them. So this whole entire multi-million-dollar company is going to have one big client after the end of this year, unless they do something about it. So what we've done is put in some, client development programs, where now they've landed 7 clients in the last 6 weeks, but it wasn't easy because they were dependent on these 3 clients. That is not recession proof. You need a minimum in contract staffing of 30 clients, a minimum of 30 clients, 10 key accounts and 20 backups, if you're going to be recession proof and if you're really going to build, a multi-million-dollar business. Number 6, I'm always asked, what is the quickest way to increase sales? The quickest way to increase sales is to have everybody focused on sendouts. A sendout to me is a candidate in front of a hiring authority first interview. So as the owner or manager, or if I have any recruiters or account executives on the phone, what you want to do, if you want to have a better year in 2020, or you want November to be better than September, look in September on how many first interviews were booked at your clients. Not second or third interviews, just first interviews. And every month increase the number of first interviews. Because in order to have a first interview, you have to have a viable contract. You have to have a qualified candidate. And so if you're just counting first interviews, you've got to do all the other things that lead to, to scheduling that interview, that first interview. But if you do nothing more as a result of the training this morning, then monitor that send out to fill ratio, or if you're doing direct hire, send out to placement ratio. If that number increases every month, sales will increase, because everyone working for you has a send out to fill or a send out to placement ratio. Everybody that's working for you needs to know how many first interviews they have to book before someone's hired. Once you know that number, you know how many more interviews you have to book to get an additional hire. And just imagine this for a minute. If you added one additional hire every month, what would that do to your production, your income, the profits of a company? It would be incredible. So you've got to know your send out to fill ratio, first interview to fill or first interview to placement, and constantly focus on that. Because in order to have a viable candidate, you've got to be good at interviewing. You've got to be good at prepping and debriefing. All the other skill sets lead into the send out number. But if you want to know what kind of month you're having, just look at how many send outs, how many first interviews were booked. Go back from January 1 of this year and track that number for everybody that works for you if you don't know it. Because now there's no mystery into what they have to do. And every month increase that first interview and you'll be amazed at how much more business you're going to fill. I want to give you some other tips that will really help you increase your sales and profits. Try to get interviewing times and a target date to fill on all the orders you write and all the contracts you write. You've got to know when they want to fill this job and try to get interviewing times up front, because how many times have you written business and then you try to book the interview and nobody's calling you back? Now, if you're working a VMS situation where you've only got 48 hours and you've got to submit candidates, and you can only submit candidates, that doesn't apply to anybody that's working in a VMS situation, but everyone else, this applies. Number 2, only interview candidates that have skills, experience, and stability. Recruiters spend a lot of time interviewing candidates you're never going to place in a job. Our clients want them to find somebody that has experience, that has the skills they need, the credentials they need, the certifications they need, and they're stable. And so you've got to learn to do, courtesy interviews and not spend time on candidates that you're not going to be able to place in a job. Number 3, you want to develop repeatable systems. You've got to develop repeatable systems. And the reason you need repeatable systems is because, again, it's no different than why franchises work. If you don't like where you are in sales, if you want to have a really record profitable year next year, there have to be systems for your sales team. There have to be systems for the recruiting team. And then as the owner or manager, you constantly look at those systems to see where do things break down so you can improve your systems. But if you don't have systems in place, then you're almost shooting from the hip. You don't know where to put your attention. You don't know how to fix a system because you don't have a system. There are certain steps that have to be taken to make you successful. And I do a lot of consulting for really some of the top firms in the country. And I can tell you that they've got systems in place. And when they hire somebody new, they get up and running very quickly because they learn the system that works. You don't want everybody to do things different ways because, again, it's harder for you to grow. You want to provide your sales team with expectations. Your recruiters and your account executives have to know what to expect from you and what you expect from them. And you have to hold people accountable. If I write a goal down and say that you gave me a goal from October and I didn't hit it, I didn't hit my goal, what happened to those numbers? If I told you I was going to produce X amount of sales and I didn't, did you just erase the board? Did that goal go away and now I have a new one for November? Because if you did that, you're hurting your team. The best thing you could do, and whether you're an individual working a desk or you're an owner or manager, the best thing you could do is look at October. What did you say you were going to do and what did you actually do? And if you did not hit your goal in October, deduct, subtract the number you did from the number you said you were going to do, divide it by 2 because there's 2 more months left in the year. You've got November and December, and add what you did not do to November and December. So you're holding yourself accountable to hit your goals. Starting in January, a goal is never erased. In January, if somebody doesn't hit their goal, you divide it by 11 because there's 11 months left in the year because you don't want your people giving up their income dream in January. But if you erase goals, you're not holding people accountable, then they're not really goals and you shouldn't even set them because there is no accountability. You've got to conduct revenue modeling. What is your best business? I want to give you an example. I met someone at the TechSurf conference 4 years ago, and this company was doing 10 million in sales, and he wanted to go to 20 million in sales, and he had tried for 4 years to go from 10 million to 20 million, and he was still at 10 million 4 years later. And he made all kinds of changes. He spent all kinds of money trying to do things and provide better resources, and his company still stayed at 10 million. And so I did some consulting for them, and what I realized is they were working on 59 titles because they had a lot of VMS clients. And that was the problem. I made the owner go back and look at where they were making money, not what business they wrote, what business they filled. And the owner was shocked to find out that over 82% of his business was 6 titles. They were sending things out on over 50 titles, but 82% of his sales were only 6 titles. And then I asked him, how many of those 6 titles are you filling? And he said, 100%. They're 82% of my business. And I said, I bet you're not. I bet you're not filling 50% of them. He went back and realized they were only filling 21% of those 6 titles. So think about that for a moment. 82% of his sales were 6 titles, and yet he was only filling 21% of those 6 titles. We redid his website, his marketing materials, his salespeople went out there only looking after the six titles. The VMS business, he had 2 people that did nothing but submit candidates out of the database to keep the report card up on the VMS clients, but they started filling 100% of the positions, those 6 titles that they got from their VMS clients. And so currently he's at 37 million. In fact, I'm meeting with him next week. I've got the TechSurf conference in Huntington Beach, California next week. And I am meeting with him because now he's at 37 million and he wants to know how to get to 50. But it's a matter of knowing who you are. You've got to conduct revenue modeling. Go back 2 years and look at the titles you filled. And that's the business you want to write. And those are the candidates you want to pipeline. Whether you have an offshore team, onshore team, you want a pipeline in advance, because by the time you write business, especially if you're working with VMS, you have no time to recruit. And so if you know who you are, conduct revenue modeling, that can change everything you do. Develop a referral program for both clients and candidates. 40% of your candidates should be referrals, and 40% of your new clients should be referrals. You can't give clients gifts because of Sarbanes-Oxley and all the laws, but what we do is we donate to their favorite charity if they refer another client. So you've got to develop a referral program. Have your sales team, have everyone that works for you right now, before Monday, have your sales team write down 10 non-negotiable goals with 5 dated action items in all areas of their life that are important to them. So it's not only career and money, it could be education, it could be philanthropic, it could be spiritual, it could be personal, it could be health. You know, you need your people healthy if they're going to produce for you. Have them write down 10 things they want to do next year. And if they just do that, they're not going to hit their goals. You know, ask your recruiters to pull out their goals for this year. Do they hit them? You know, they're probably in a desk drawer somewhere. You want them to write down 10 non-negotiable goals with 5 action items that are dated under each goal, because then they'll attain the goal. And if the five action items are the 5 steps to attain the goal, if they can't attain their goal in 5 steps, they need to break that goal maybe into 2 or 3 different goals. But the best thing you could do for yourself and your team right now is to have people write down their goals for 2020 now, because everything you do in November and December impacts 2020. You're either setting up yourself for a record year next year, or some people try to skate because they've got a lot of reoccurring revenue and reoccurring income, and they're thinking that, you know, it's the holidays and people aren't going to hire. I'm telling you, people have hiring budgets and they're hiring now. If your people are not hiring, then you're not out there, you know, going after the business. So if you have your sales team write down goals, they start thinking of their goals, and as they finish an action item, they check it off. And eventually, once they finish those 5 action items, they attain their goal. And if you want to run your contests, run contests that help them complete some of their action items, and that'll motivate them. And you've got to provide continual training, especially the younger generations. Over 50% of the workforce are now millennials and Gen Z. By 2025, 75% of the workforce are going to be millennials. And millennials want your guidance. They want you to provide consistent training. They want to know how they're doing, and they want to know where they can get to. They want to know, what is the career advancement working for you? How can they make more money? How can they be more successful? Again, that's why you need systems. Millennials will follow systems if they're proven successful. You know, everybody that I'm talking to in staffing and recruiting, and I've been to 4 staffing conferences in the last 3 weeks, and all the owners are just, where do we find people? How do we hire people? And a lot of people are losing their good people. And I'm telling you, if you don't train and if you don't guide and mentor this younger generation, you're going to lose them. And they've got to know where their career can go, and why is their work meaningful? Why is what you do meaningful? They need to know what your goals are so that they know what their role in helping you achieve those goals are. They've got to realize every day they're changing people's lives for the better. Every day they're helping companies attain their goals by the talent that they place. You've got to remind them of that. What we do is extremely important, and everybody needs our services. When people say no to you, you didn't make the right phone call. And when they say no, they're really saying not yet, because everyone needs your services. You just have to position yourself. People, you know, I speak in front of a lot of corporate audiences. I just got back from LinkedIn. I've done 14 courses for LinkedIn Learning, and I just recorded 2 more courses last week. I was in their studios recording. And it's interesting because I've had over 2 million people take my courses. And it's interesting because, you know, what I'm finding out, you know, as I'm training people, is so many people are not changing the way they're working their desk. And so much has changed out there. You've got to constantly keep up with what's going out there, because, you know, the marketplace has changed, candidates have changed, clients have changed, and you've got a new generation in your office. You've got new people working for you. They may ask you how to advance their career before they've even mastered the basics, but they bring a lot to the table, and they represent over 50% of the workforce, and they're now your clients. They place a very high value on the core values of your business: feedback, training, and work-life balance. My final question to you as part of this training is, do you offer comprehensive, consistent training to your team? Because in addition to basically having systems for everything and having processes, you have to provide training. Now, I feel like I'm singing to the choir because you're on this call. And if you're on this call, you put a premium on training. And I would hope that that any free training you see out there, that you constantly involve your team. And so if you're providing consistent training, congratulations. If you're not providing consistent training, I'd like to provide you with a comprehensive solution, because the truth of the matter is training is not the best use of valuable time of most owners. Most owners don't like to train. Or sometimes you take a top producer and you want them to train your new people. That's not best use of their time either. And the reason it's not best use of their time is every time you're training, you're not producing. And so we have a comprehensive turnkey web-based training program that you can use for your team in the United States. You can use for your offshore team. I have offshore teams in India, in Manila, in Spain, in the Philippines, in Vietnam. We train teams all over the world. We have actually training clients in 15 countries right now. And so if training is not the most valuable use of your time, what I would suggest to you at the end of my training for you today is call and schedule a demo. We have a program that is web-based. It's very easy to take. There's accountability in our training because people have to write down what they learned. They're tested on what they learned. The call I just did for you, I do calls like this every week for my training clients. Every week I am on the call and I get the topics from the people that are my clients. But what do you want me to train on this week? And so we only write the calls, like I just wrote the calls for November last week. So in the first week of every month, I do a call for owners and managers, and you're on the line with owners and managers from all over the world. And your recruiters and your account execs will be on these live calls, and they'll hear questions that other people are asking me. And so that helps them learn because they're listening to other people asking me questions. I also do biweekly coaching calls where I just get on the phone and go, what questions do you have? And people bombard me with questions. There's a structured program that you would sign up to take, but there's also a library that has over 300 of the recording calls. A call like I did for you today, there's 300 of these calls in our library that anybody can access. They can watch them, they can download them on an MP4 player, they can print out the handout and read it however they like to learn. I also provide all my forms and documents. And so if anybody on this call, whenever I do a training call, I always put a special offer. I also have a strategic management tutor that shows you how to manage and still work a desk. How do you balance that, managing and producing and running a business or managing a business? And that program you would get free if you sign up for our Top Producer Tutor program. Also, the first 5 people that call my office for a demo, I'm going to throw one more thing out there. The first 5 people that call, I will give you 5 seats in the tutor free. Because once you own our tutor, each seat costs $50 to get somebody in the program for as long as they work for you. So $50 gives them access to all the training, all the live calls, all the forms, everything for as long as they work for you. And so 5 seats are worth $250. And the first 5 people that call after this webinar will get those 5 seats free. So I really thank you for joining me. I hope that you got information that can help you set up a record 2020. I only train so you can make more money. I've been in the business almost 30 years. I actually wrote the certification program for IT and engineering contract staffing. So I wrote the body of knowledge that people are using, and that's all best practices. And that's all that my training is. I go out there constantly and I attend conferences. I speak at conferences. Next week, I have 3 conferences in 1 week. And the reason I'm doing that is I constantly am learning myself. And when I learn new things, I pass them on to my clients. So I hope that some of the information you learned today can help you make more money next year. We would love to welcome you as one of our training clients. It'll take 30 minutes of your time to set up a demo. It's just a 30-minute demo. And we give you access to the tutor. So we give you a login and a password, and you go in and look at it and see if it's something you want. So it's not us talking and you listening. So I do encourage all of you to call and set up a demo. The first 5 people will get those seats free. And if nothing else, you can look at our program and maybe give you ideas of how to improve your program. I'm more than willing to share everything I have with you. So what I want to do now is if anybody has any questions, you can ask me questions one of 2 ways. You can go to the control panel on the right and go to the attendee list, and you see that little hand. If you click on that hand, I can talk to you. I can open your lines and you and I can talk. Or if you go down below, there's a bar that says questions. And if you type in anything in the questions, I'd be glad to answer. If you don't want me to say your name, then put down confidential or anonymous, before you type in your question, because otherwise I'll use your first name. Ellison, I'm unmuting your line. Ellison, do you have a question? Ellison, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question? Okay, if you called in on a computer, it won't work. So you have to be calling in on a phone. So if you do have a question, Ellison, if you want to type it down below, I'd be glad to answer your question. So let me give you a couple minutes to do that. Let's see, I see no other hands being raised. I see 2 questions down below. Who can I involve on the demo? You could have as many people on the demo as you want. So if you want to show your team the demo, you can do that. And so, or if you just want to have your management team look at it, you can have as many people on the demo as you want. We'll give you a conference line. And again, it doesn't even take 30 minutes. And we basically walk you through it a little bit. So when we give you a login and a password, you know where to click. So that's basically, we're just showing you an overview and then showing you where to click. Was that the truth that for $50 after we buy your program, that's all it will cost for a new hire to be trained by you? Yes. It's a one-time $50 charge, and they're put in the tutor, and they're also given all the calls and everything. Allison, your hand is up again. I'm going to try to mute you again. Oh, I see you wrote a question down below now. All right, perfect. Let's see. Can you share any industry standard KPIs companies are using? KPIs are all over the board, Allison. And again, I would have to know more about exactly like, what do you do? Like, what is your niche? Are you doing a combination of direct, contract? When it comes to calls, I don't think anybody has a KPI for calls. I think what people are doing is they're looking at individual ratios. And in order to figure out your KPIs, you got to look at basically say temp to perm, and we focus on manufacturing. Yeah, see, if you're doing light industrial, temp, light manufacturing, your KPIs are much higher because most of the time you're not even interviewing candidates. You're just getting them through a screening process and they show up to work and start. And so I think what you have to do is you have to look at what your people want to earn, look at their individual ratios, and then, figure out your KPIs. Because right now, and also KPIs are dramatically impacted, Allison, by if you're working with VMS clients or if you're working with where you've got, where you've got direct contact with the hiring authority, because obviously numbers are much higher, ratios are much higher when you've got a VMS situation because you don't have contact with the hiring authority. So unfortunately, that's something that I individually sit down with people and actually calculate because I've got to get to know your business. I can tell you that with the VMS clients, on average, when there's a VMS and you are submitting 10 times more candidates than you are if you've got direct, with hiring authorities. The temp is just hard. Temp and contract is hard to give KPIs over the phone. As far as direct clients are the exact same way, if it's a VMS or not. If you've got direct contact with hiring authorities right now, it's usually a 6-to-1 ratio on first interviews to hires. If your ratio is higher than that, then you got to look at the jobs you're writing, or you've got to look at the type of clients you're representing. Have you upgraded your clients? So the 6-to-1 is about average on the direct side. On the contract side, if you're doing lower level, there is no, send out to placement. I mean, there's nothing because you're getting them through a screening process and they report to work. On the contract side, it depends. Again, it depends on VMS or non-VMS. On the contract side, submittals are averaging when there's a non-VMS that you're probably placing 8 or 9 people out of 100 you submit. If there's not a VMS on site and there's an interviewing process, you're placing more like 18 to 20 out of 100 submitted. So again, it goes to that 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6. You want to get it there. That's where you want to be. But again, to try to give you KPIs, not knowing your business, are tough. But that can give you like some guidelines. Barb, if I want to talk to you direct, can I? Yes. I mean, I do some consulting, but I try to give you as much as I can. The cheapest way to have access to me live is to invest in our training program, because you got me on the phone live 6 times a month, and you can ask me any questions you want. But if you do want one-on-one attention, just call that same number and my team can set you up. Does it really only cost $50? I find that hard to believe. Well, you invest in the program up front, but yes, it's $50 a person. And you can call, my office can get you pricing in that. But again, the first 5 that call, and you're just calling to see a demo. There's no cost to see a demo. And I'm telling you, now is when you got to start thinking about 2020. If you're going to do a lot of hiring, you really have to think about, is training best use of your time? Let's see, Karen, I see your hand is up. I've got your line unmuted. Do you have a question, Karen? Karen, I've got you unmuted. I think some of you called in by computer and I can't unmute your calls. If any of you have any questions after the call that you couldn't get through to me on, just some general question, send your questions to support@staffingandrecruiting.com. That email address you sent on the screen, and I'd be glad to answer any questions about today's training for you. All right, I said I was only going to take 30 minutes of your time. I'm a little bit over because I do value your time. Thank you for joining me. I hope that some of you, decide to look at our training program because it is comprehensive. We put over 25,000 recruiters and account executives through our program in 15 countries. And so we know it works. 100% of our clients have increased sales. So we have a great track record of success, and it would take 30 minutes of your time to look at this. So thanks for joining me. I hope the training will help you have a record year, and I hope that you have a record last quarter. But again, hold yourself accountable. Don't erase goals, and write down the 10 goals for the 10 non-negotiable goals for 2020 before Monday. That'll make all the difference in the world. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.